What I found to be rather unique is that I think when I came across your social media post that at the time, if I recall correctly, if I read this here, that you were celebrating, I think 5 or 6 years being out in LA since you've left. I believe you're originally from Oklahoma, if I heard correctly.
No, I'm originally from Chicago.
Chicago, okay.
Yeah, but
your mother lives.
So I went to high school in Oklahoma.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I went back to Chicago immediately.
Well, I can hear your Chicago accent now, which is strange because for some reason I was under the impression you were a Southerner because you actually put on a pretty good Southern accent as well too. So it was one of those things where I was trying to, yeah. But here's what I'm wondering with you. Considering the work that I've come across you have done, you definitely, in my opinion, came across with someone that has a lot of more of a comedic background when it came to the type of stuff you're doing. So what I was trying to find out more in depth with you, which I don't think I was very successful in finding here, but I wasn't sure if you had done any form of stand-up, or maybe you've done a lot of improv that led into then from there, because I know Chicago's well known for that as well too. So I was curious about that background with yourself, but then getting into LA, where I'm not sure if some things have changed for you along the way in terms of like what your initial intention was as far as the type of roles you wanted to get, and then what ended up coming across the table for you to be able to get work, to be able to move from one project to the next in hopes that you can get something else that you may want to follow through with here. So I hope it's not a long question to get into here, but so with your background and considering that you have, and from what I understand, an improv background, I'm curious with yourself though, because with that type of background, you have experience and be able to adapt pretty much on the spot like that when it comes to what's necessary for the role, whether it be dramatic or comedic beats here. But for you though, getting over to LA and learning to adapt to the system out there, I'm curious to see what's one of the biggest things that you, for yourself, that you have realized that, okay, I've really got, whatever I was doing in Chicago is not necessarily going to work for me out here in terms of how I approach my work, not necessarily your work ethic, but the way you approach acting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I actually have a conservatory acting training from university.
Okay.
So I'm studied and trained in Meisner technique, and which is more for theater, I'd say, but it still works very well for film. Mm-hmm. And then after I graduated college, I did a bunch of improv in Chicago. Mm. And I guess if I'm understanding your question correctly, school, as far as university and the theater and acting world, does not teach you anything about the business side of the job. So I can honestly say that after I moved to LA, so I've been in LA, I think 8 years now, not including COVID. So I learned more about the business side of acting in 1 month of being in LA than I did in that 8 years after I graduated college in Chicago.
So the 1 month that you were in LA, when you first arrived there, that whole experience there has taught you all about the entertainment, the business side of it in LA, or as far as the film business is concerned, that's still consistent right now from all the years you've been out there, or has some changed along the way that you realize, okay, this is no longer applied anymore because some things in the industry has changed along the way?
No, basically the fact that they don't teach you that in school, they don't teach you anything about the business, then not to mention, I guess I saw how far behind the other, like Chicago was compared to LA, as far as like knowing different things about the business and how to be more successful in it. And
what do you mean by that?
Just, well, first of all, I mean, in simple terms, there's way less opportunity in Chicago for film, which is what I decided I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So there's way less opportunities. I mean, casting directors alone, when I left Chicago, there was only 3 of note. And there's like, 3,000 in LA. So just being able to like get yourself out there more, there's more classes, there's more, just the simple fact, I think too, that you're around the business more. Because like I said, it's a very small, although it's a big community, it's a small community in Chicago that's in the actual industry. Whereas in Los Angeles, 90% of the people who live out there are in the industry in some way, shape, or form. So you can strike up conversations with people and be like, oh, I had no idea that's how that went down. Or I had no idea, or what's your advice on how I can get in the door places or whatever.
Right.
So I do think a lot of it is word of mouth and knowing people. So I hope that's kind of what you meant by answering, or if I answered.
It was, but I mean, again, I'm not sure, because again, the experience that you would have, it's not going to be the same answers as someone else that would be asked that question. Right. So, I mean, it's not going to, I just don't know what your experience is going to be in that respect. But here's the thing that I'm actually curious with you, now that you've had, nearly a decade of being out in LA, for understanding what the business is like. For yourself though, was that kind of a culture shock for you in that respect, being educated and having to understand how that works? And if it was it, did they become overwhelming for you at times, or maybe you thought maybe I should just take a step back and go back and reconsider my options here, because this is probably a little too, because the people who are trying to follow the acting a career, it's a very, very rough thing. You're a lot of highs and lows, and it can be a lot of dry spots, and then you may flourish for a certain period of time before it dries up again.
Right.
So at any point when you were coming out there, first having that experience, and the first initial month understanding the business, that was that a little overwhelming for yourself in that regard?
I don't think it was overwhelming for me, other than that it made me realize that I wasn't trying as hard as I should have been, Okay. I guess in Chicago, because there wasn't as many opportunities, it was like when something arises, it's like, yes, I'm going to do it, and it was few and far between. And then you'd be like if I got cast in an independent film, it'd be like, when are we shooting? Like, I want to do this now, and then if stuff fell through or whatever, it was like super disappointing. But I guess in LA, there's just like something around the corner. So, you have to try a lot harder and work a lot longer, like in the day, I guess I'm saying, in order to get what you want, in order to not have somebody else get there before you.
For you though, because I know because you talked before about you wanted to start your own production as far as like films that you wanted to work on to get off the ground here. I'm not sure if that was your initial thought process to start doing that, because I would imagine for most people who are starting to break into the business that I want to be an actor, and they have the goal in mind to train to be a better actor, learn how to memorize the lines and so on. But for yourself, was that the initial goal to, I'm going to start making my own films when I get out there, but I know I have to start acting first before I get to know some people to be able to start that path and creating my own project? No,
that wasn't my initial goals to do. Okay. I think after I got out there and, in all honesty, wasn't getting even auditions as much as I thought I would be getting. Like, I was getting auditions mainly from things I was self-submitting to, independent, small projects and stuff like that. But, I wasn't getting called in for like major TV shows or major films. And so then it got to the point where it's like, I don't really have anything that's like good quality for my reel. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, maybe I would be getting more auditions if I had more quality, legit looking material. So that kind of was what prompted me to start making my own. Like, so I've made like 4 short films. And
one of them was actually Dolos that you had done as well too, which more like a period piece. Was that one of the reasons for you doing that as well?
Yeah, I actually did that over COVID, half out of boredom, but half because I wanted to have something of me doing a period piece. So I made that, in all honesty, so that I could have footage of me doing it. But then it's a double bonus when you're like, oh, I made a short film and I can submit it to festivals, and
Right. Well, and the thing is that because I did come across a clip for that short where I'm not, because again, I wasn't too aware as far as what the tempo was with the accent, but it kind of had more of like I would assume a British accent. Is that was more or less what you're trying to go for? Was a specific type of accent of that era. I'm not sure if it was here meant to be here for America or elsewhere overseas.
Well, I did like what they call a standard British accent,
Okay.
which
Okay.
is technically, I think, you're taught it in school. It's it's not really a real British accent.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
basically like an understandable British accent that the American people can take on and believe. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
It does make sense.
I mean,
So,
I obviously tried to do I tried to do a legit British accent. If you asked me what area of England I was doing, I have no idea.
okay. Well, so let me ask you about accents here, because again, because I was telling you about earlier that because I can hear your Chicago accent now, especially now I'm listening to you talk more. It's starting to come out a little bit more for me to pick up on. Because when I saw Bull Shark, and I meant what I said. I thought you did a pretty good job in mimicking, more or less a Texan accent. So that was pretty consistent across the board in that regard. For yourself, though, when it comes to you doing accents, is that difficult, easy for you to do, or maybe it's not difficult, but you have to develop the skill to be able to learn to adapt to the
Yeah.
accent and then be able to maintain it. So I'm not sure what your process is like and you having to learn a new accent.
There's accents to me that are super easy for me to do, and then others that I can't do if my life depended on it.
Like,
And
what's one easy accent for you to do?
I mean, I can fall into a British accent easily. I obviously can do a Southern one.
Mhm.
I can fake a Russian accent to the best of my ability. And obviously, I'm sure if a real Russian person heard it, I don't know what their thoughts would be on it. But like, I actually was going to submit for this audition, but it said has to do an Australian accent. And I was like, well, no, can't do that. So I submitted for another role, and then they called me in for the Australian role. And I was like, okay. So I did a take in Australian and in my normal accent. And then I booked it, and I was like, oh my God, I can actually do an Australian accent. And then when I got to set, they're like, no, we're doing the American, and your Australian was pretty laughable, Colleen. But, so you never know what's going to happen. But I can do, some of them come off as characters, but like you said, I have a comedy background. So it's like a lot of it's like fake it, over exaggerate it,
like caricatures in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
But so, for example, like, so let's go to Bullshit real quick, because working with everyone on the set in Texas, was that one of the requirements that Brett asked of you? Hey, you need to put on a Texan accent because your character is Texan. So was that one of those things, or was that something you decided you wanted to put on for the role?
Yeah, no, that wasn't specified. When I got the audition, I saw that somewhere it said that it was going to be taking place in Texas. So I just, made a choice and did that. Okay.
And when you had done it, were you a little nervous about, because you're surrounding yourself with a lot of Texan actors, Tom Hallam, who was born and raised in Texas. So doing the accent around him, were you concerned about, is it going to sound as authentic for him to not be distracted with my accent, attempting to do a Texan accent?
To be honest, that didn't even cross my mind. We did, however, before shooting, make jokes about their accents, or I made jokes about their accents and teased them. I was like, damn, that's like real thick. But no, I didn't even think about that, what you just asked. But again, like, my character was a character kind of, so she's kind of was in her own world. So I think if it didn't sound as super authentic and, because they were both like, they're the straight man, I'm the character. So yeah, I think it
the voice of reason, if you will.
Yeah. If I sound a little bit different, it fits. You know what I mean? So
were you actually familiar with Brett's movies prior to the audition beforehand, or
I wasn't, actually?
Okay.
But then after I booked it, I saw that you interviewed Adam Hampton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that he was in one of their shows, and so he told me about him and stuff. So that was cool.
Oh, so you're familiar with Adam before meeting up with Brett then?
Yeah, I actually did a short film that he directed.
Really? Which one was that?
It was for a like a a training seminar. Sorry, I'm going blank on the name of the place now. Basically it was like a thing for film students to get to actually be on set, like on a real set. And so they had all these professionals working in the different departments, like the head lighting designer or set designer. And then so the students are actually on set and they build a set, and they did it at that huge new studio in Oklahoma City here. And then they asked Adam to direct it. So I auditioned for it through my agent and then was like, oh, cool.
And what was your experience like working with Adam? Like, did you, because Adam, because I've talked to him before on more than one occasion where it kind of gives me the impression that he's very adamant about what he wants to accomplish, but he also seems to have like this kind of like a personality where I wouldn't say pushes, but I'm not sure how, because at least the experience that he's sharing with his friends, with when it comes to the guys over in Outsiders, Jason, Chad, and Kenny. So maybe I'm confusing it with him, how he deals with them in that respect. But for you,
well, they worked on it too. They worked on this project too. Him and Jason actually co-directed.
Okay.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the day before we were shooting, Adam got COVID. So he was like Zooming with us on set. So it was kind of interesting, but I did talk with Adam, like the cast did. We Zoomed with him before the shoot, and he's really cool. I mean, cause he's an actor too. So he was very into actually breaking down the characters and discussing all that jazz, where sometimes you work with directors that are more just like focused on the actual production, and then the actors, like I think some actors are like, yes, I'm casting you, you're exactly what I thought, and so then they don't have to worry about it, and so they are more focused on.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So I feel like, Adam as being an actor first, he's like was really into talking about the character and the background and like that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. And so with Adam, he basically gave you background to fill in the gaps with the character. And then did he give you opportunities to improvise certain things so long as you stay within the context of the character? Or was he adamant about do it like this, but I'll give you more information to add on to the character for yourself?
Yeah. Well, this particular thing, and I don't know how far you mean by improv, like if you mean like actually like switching lines or adding lines, this particular thing, we weren't allowed to do that because it was this student project. So it was like stick exactly to the script, word for word, because it's a learning environment for them too. But yeah, he obviously let me play the character. I did a character too. The role was actually written for a man, and they let me audition, and I did kind of like a weird, like the guy from Office Space, like the boss in that, the one who's in coffee, and he's like, yeah. So I just did like a weird character or whatever, and they ended up liking it. So that was cool because I beat out all the dudes.
So okay, and so working with Adam, and in this case, because Adam has a connection with Brett, and working with Brett, and having that experience with him on Bull Shark, was your experience with him as far as him giving you the ability, giving you freedom to improvise for the character, like making some adjustments that you feel like was necessary to help with the character, therefore help with the story? Or is your experience with Brett more like do it like this, but you can wiggle around and do it in certain areas where the character here over the scene, but as long as you stay within the guidelines of what I need you to do?
Well, Brett was cool actually. There was that one scene, and I don't know if you remember, in Bull Shark, where we're in the office and all the phones are ringing and we're going back and forth, and he's like, Rima, get in here, and I'm whatever. So Brett actually let us just kind of mess around with that scene before we shot and like work out like how we felt that the blocking would be most realistic and natural for how we were doing it.
Right.
So we didn't like switch any of the lines as far as improv goes, but I guess he kind of like let us improv how to flow it out, and
Right.
then obviously then the camera guy came in, and then him and the camera guy decided, the cinematographer decided how they were going to get the shots and everything,
Right.
So that was cool because like that helped too. Because a lot of times, sometimes too, you'll get on set and they'll be like, okay, go. And it's like, did you want me to move here or am I standing or like, who am I talking to? You know what I mean? Like some of them don't, some don't have a clue.
So I'm curious about you then, when it comes to how you prefer to work on set. Because to me, you almost strikes me as someone that if given the opportunity for you to improvise, you're going to jump at the chance to be able to make some adjustments that you see fit for what's required. But do you have a preference about how you like a director to work with you about preparing for the role, preparing for the shot, that they not necessarily have to give you one-on-one, but to kind of at least give you some set of guidelines about, okay, so Colleen, you're going to be coming into this scene here, but I need you to come up with something to do with this. Or do you prefer that if they say to you, just make sure you do, you hit your mark and then say the lines and just make sure you're angry when you say it? Like, what's your preference about how you prefer to work with the director in that respect?
I guess if I have to say, I would prefer like a one-on-one. I mean, I think that like, and at the end of the day too, I think it helps save time if they literally can take 5 seconds away to come be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking?
Right.
Just because I have like, I just shot a TV show and it was, I flew all the way to New Orleans to shoot it. And I literally was like actually on set for like an hour. And it's like, after you come out of your trailer, they take you in, we read the lines through once. And then it was like, push you on set. And then you just go, you just go. And then it's like, why like hundreds of people are like stopping and being like, okay, I have to adjust this light. Okay. I didn't get, the cinematographer's like, I didn't get that, or I was clipping her head off or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Then the director might come up and be like, yeah, just, maybe say that line different. Okay. And you're like, okay. All right, cool. And then they're like, okay, go. Like, it's so fast,
Right.
And like, and improving or having an improv background definitely helps for situations like that, because you're like, okay, I'm just going to go, I'm just going to wing it. And having a theater background, performing live. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to go and see what happens, but, and I think that works a lot better with comedy, but if it's like a drama and stuff, like I want to know what's happening first. Right. I want to break it down and talk about it first. But you don't always get that.
So I'm curious about your choice of preference when it comes to films, because again, I think I heard you mention in the past that comedy is more or less your bread and butter. If I heard correctly here, is that what you would prefer to stick with, at least? Because I'm sure every actor does want to have to be able to expand on their arsenal when having to work on certain projects that will be very challenging for them in some way, shape, or form, whether it be comedy, drama, whatever the case may be. But for you, though, do you have a choice about, I'm sorry, I meant to say a preference about what particular genre you would prefer one over the other? That if someone says, hey, there's an audition, there's 3 out on the verge right now of happening, but they're all comedic roles, but there's another one over here that's potentially really large project, maybe a small role, but it's going to be on a major project, but it's a dramatic role. If someone had given you the opportunity to make a selection, which one you would go to, would you be leaning more towards a comedy film or more or less a dramatic film, depending on the circumstance for what it requires?
So if you're saying if I had to choose between them,
if it was up to you, if you were given a choice, if they said there's 3 roles that you can audition for, these are the 3 roles, and these are all comedic roles, and there are various types that would fit your sensibilities. But if someone says there is a dramatic role there's an audition for, that could be really challenging, but the stipulation is that it's a small role, but it's going to be part of a bigger project. It's, in other words, it's going to have, household names on there and be released theatrically, whatever the case may be. But considering that comedy would probably be something you may be leaning towards here, but these are more or less smaller films, but you're going to be able to expand on these roles that you have. You can test out your comedic skills in these variations that these roles may offer here. Whereas this dramatic role, one little small part, but it's a challenging one, but it's only going to be for X amount of days. Whereas this one, you have more room to be able to expand on your your comedic sense, if
Right.
that makes any sense. I hope it's not a long question, but I'm curious to see how you would go about it there, because I'm actually quite curious in asking someone this here, because I always wonder if there's a stipulation about that thought process when it comes to what they prefer and instead of what's given to them.
Well, actually had that exact situation just happen to me in
Interesting.
I booked a role on my favorite TV show. And I'm going to be in a couple of episodes of it. So that's amazing. And it's my favorite TV show. A week after I got it, I booked a role on an improv comedy film, like a big, huge comedy, and where I got to do like a really cool character, and I really wanted to do the part. But they shot at the exact same time. So I had to choose. And again, it's my favorite TV show. So obviously I was going to choose it. You know what I mean? But I can't say that I wasn't slightly disappointed, because I would have had a lot of fun playing that character. You know what I mean? And that character's more in my wheelhouse and in my brand, I guess.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm still disappointed about that, to be honest. At the end of the day, though, I have to also think about it, the fact that this is a business and it's my career. So it's like, if I like the part better in an independent comedy and I feel like it fits me more, but I was to get, cast in a huge production with name people and all that, I kind of would have to go with that, just as far as, and where I'm at in my career,
Right.
Like if I was like a star or something, it'd be different. And I'd be like, no, I can do this because
I see what you're saying.
it's a passion project. I don't have to worry about, am I being able to feed myself, let alone that this is going to open doors for me. Whereas this is going to be, it's going to be like, cult, like people who want to see Colleen do her thing are going to see that and like, are going to love it. But this is going to open up more doors for me. And that's where I'm at in my career.
Okay. So this leads me to another question that you kind of brought up, something that I wanted to ask you now, because of the show that you talked about that you worked on earlier this year. Apart from it being your favorite show, but the fact that there's a brand behind that show that would probably be able to garner more attention for yourself, because I would imagine that, well, what have you done while I was on this show? Really? Okay, great. Let's have you come in for, X, Y, and Z, because that helps in pushing your career in that regard. But here's what I'm curious about with you when it comes to that, because so I understand that, because it's one of your favorite shows, but there's also a business side of it as well too, that you made this choice of removing the fact it's your favorite show, but it's a business decision that this could help in pushing my career to to hopefully come to a point where when I don't have to worry about looking for roles that are offered here to me, then I can make the decision to do roles of that improvised film that I wanted to do. So I can just take that time to do that. But when it comes to decisions like that, do you feel like for yourself at times that almost is a detriment? And what I mean by that is this: if you have if you're looking at a role that you may not, maybe that's not the best way to say it, but you want to take for the business side of it here, that could potentially help your career, but then understand that it may take a while before that could actually happen, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Whereas if you look at another project that could actually help in terms of your acting capabilities and you be able to work on the craft, if you will, do you feel like in making those type of decisions that actually may be a slight detriment because of what's required in order for you to help boost your career in that regard? I hope the question makes sense with what I'm asking here.
I don't know if it does, but yeah. And like the role on the TV show, and now I feel kind of odd that I said that earlier. I hate to sound lame and sound like a a blue actor or something, but in the fact that it's like the part is small. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you know the difference between a co-star and a guest star on a TV show? Okay. Yeah. So it's a co-star. Like I'm a recurring co-star. So I'll be in more than one episode, but it's still a co-star. So like the role doesn't, my personal role doesn't do anything for the story. But you know, it doesn't change, me being there doesn't change the story at all, you know? Mm-hmm. So if I'm understanding your question at all, yes, that I don't know if it's really at the end of the day. I think that having those credits on my resume and will help me get in the doors with other casting directors to hopefully be in other bigger projects. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I do feel like if I had taken this film, that character that I got to play, which was a major supporting role in the film, and again, more on my brand, that could have elevated me too. So that's, I guess, why I said that I still feel, I don't feel regret. I made the right decision, and I would have, I mean, like, it's a dream come true to get cast on your favorite TV show. Like, that's the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. So I'm not in any way negating that, but I still am disappointed I couldn't do that film. Like, still super disappointed and wonder too, you know?
Right.
Like, who knows? And you never know with films, like TV shows, especially a TV show that's been on for a while, has already got its footing. You know what I mean? You never know when you shoot a film, if it's gonna be a blockbuster or if it's just gonna, you know, find its way into the director's basement or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, there's always that wonder, you know, and I guess I won't know till that film comes out, like, who they got to do it instead, and is the film going to be, you know, like this huge success, you know?
Right. Well, okay. So, and that does answer my questions. I apologize if my question sounded way too complicated, because I was thinking about how I was going to say it, and I'm like, so anyway, so I overthink things sometimes, but so this leads me to the other thing that I wanted to get into here with you. The career path you've taken. Have you ever felt like at any point that, you know, whenever you have some dry spells, that if it's even worth it for you to continue on? Because clearly you've been doing this for, you know, since you've been out to LA for almost a decade. But I wonder if you had any sort of feelings where you may felt like, I'm not sure if this is even worth it, because I need to support myself. I'm not getting anything worked out for me right now, or if I've come close with certain projects and they fell through, or for one reason or another. But I'm wondering if you ever felt like giving up at any point, to possibly walking away from all this here and then go into something that may be more safer for you to be able to maintain a pretty consistent paycheck, if you will.
Yeah. I've honestly never gotten to the point where I even thought about giving up.
Okay.
But that's not to say that more than 50% of the time, it's very depressing, and you're like, when the hell is something going to happen?
Right.
You know, I know that a lot of my friends and stuff have debated it. I don't know. That just hasn't ever clicked in my head to be like, give up. But every day, I'm like, when's something going to happen, you know, or like, you know, like every day there is, I hate to get all negative, but every day there's like a depressing moment, you know, where you're like, am I wasting my time? I guess I've asked myself, am I wasting my time? Am I ever going to get to the point where I'm like legit, you know, making 100% of my living off this and not struggling? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I am currently, you know, like, acting is my only job right now. You know what I mean? Right. And I've bartended for my whole adult life, and but then COVID, of course. Right. So but am I like comfortable? No. You know, I'm at my mom's right now.
Looks like a nice place she lives out here too, by the way.
She will like that. I'll let her know. But yeah, I've never gotten to the point where I wanted to give up or turn in the key or throw in the towel or whatever. But yeah, it's hard. It's very, very hard, and it's very, very depressing at times. There's been days where I literally, before my eyes even open, I start crying. Like,
really?
There was a period. It was actually right after I joined the union, where I didn't have any auditions for like 8 months. I didn't have an audition in 8 months. And I literally was waking up and was like crying. I mean, literally, like, you know, like when you wake up, before you open your eyes, you're like, you're awake. Before I even had my eyes open, there was tears coming out, because it was like another day that I'm just a waitress, that I'm just a bartender. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And, but I didn't give up. And actually COVID was it's horrible to say this, but for me, it was like a really good thing, because it, you know, I couldn't go to that bartending job, which means I had no excuse to not 100% focus on my career. And, you know, I have come leaps and bounds just in the last 2 years.
Interesting.
Because of having that time to actually like focus and put all of my energy into it. I mean, like, you'd get an audition in LA, like I had to bartend 6, maybe 7 days a week to pay my rent, maybe on time. And I'd be like, oh, I get an audition, it's tomorrow, you know? Okay, well, I'll just learn this while I'm at work. Like, you can freaking learn it at work while you're bartending and helping people. So that didn't happen. And then your auditions suffer, you know? You don't know the lines even, let alone what's happening. You don't have any time to research any of the stuff. So it's kind of been a blessing for me. And so I'm just try, you know, when it is dry, because it's like I'll have a week where I'll have like, I had 17 auditions in 1 week a few weeks ago. And then this past week I had 1, you know? So it's like, you never know. And then you're like, what? Now I'm not even getting any auditions, let alone how am I supposed to book something if I don't have any auditions? And then your head goes all crazy and you're like, you know,
right.
And you just have to know, okay, you've been here before. This too shall pass, you know?
Well, so talk to me about that time when you woke up, and you were, you were crying, but what was it about that moment where you told yourself, I still want to keep doing this here? Because if you're coming to the point where you're, you kind of say I'm not sure if you're implying that if you were depressed, at least in that moment, but when you wake up feeling that way, was it hard for you to kind of get over that mental block and say, you know what, I'm still going to go through with this here because I want to do this? Or would there something change along the way once COVID happened? You realize, you know what, I have to be doing this here. So now, your mindset changed along with that as well too, where you're kind of forced yourself in a situation where you are trying to make these changes occur because now you have the time to be able to invest into that here. So I'm wondering what occurred for you to be able to overcome that for yourself, at least at that moment.
Well, first of all, that moment of me waking up and crying was not just once. That was
okay.
I don't know, man. I guess just mind over matter. I don't know. I've just always known my main struggle has been getting the auditions.
Okay.
And I think it might be because I'm a wild card. I mean, like, they're either calling in the ingenue type, or they're calling in, for females anyway, or there's the mom. And then there's like the supporting best friend type. And, I was told this by my first agent I ever had in Chicago. He's like, I'm struggling with you, Colleen, because you're not hot enough to be the ingenue, but you're not ugly enough to be the best friend. And I'm like, well, thanks for that. But, what are you supposed to do with that? And then he also told me, I think you, because you're a character actor, are going to get a lot of work when you're older. So he was the top agent in Chicago at the time, and he couldn't get me any auditions. And that's always been my struggle. And then when I would get the auditions, I have like a 50-50 booking rate. You know what I mean? And I guess that's just like having, I not to sound conceited or whatever, but it's like, I know I have a skill and I know I have a talent and I know I have uniqueness. And I'm like, if I can get in the freaking room, then they'll see that. And then that's finally what has been starting to happen for me the last couple of years, is that I finally started getting in the room and now I'm getting stuff because of it. So when you say when I was waking up and crying, it was, okay, what new angle can I figure out as to why I'm not getting in the room? What can I do to get in the room? So it was just a constant, okay, I need to talk to somebody else. I need to get advice from somebody else, or I need to meet this person, or I need to put myself in this situation so I know them, or I need to make my own content so that they can see it on the internet. Something to make people see you. You asked about like stand up at the very beginning of it, which I've always wanted to do. And everybody asks me that if I do stand up, and I haven't 100% gotten the balls yet, but it's going to happen. So again, it's just like getting yourself in front of people. And I know that. And so that's really what I did during COVID, is I used all of my time to put myself in front of everybody. And then, I made Dolos, and so I do know now that when I get depressed, or if I feel like something's not happening, I do think back to that time. And I'm like, you know what? You maybe didn't book something this week, but a year or 2 years ago, you weren't even getting auditions. So, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
So explain to me then about the hustle for yourself and having to, because again, I know every actor goes to this here, especially ones that are really passionate about it here, but where you have to get to know people. And then I'm not sure if you make calls. Hey, do you know anyone that may be able to help me out with X, Y, and Z? I'm thinking about starting this and that. Or better yet, make a decision to probably switch representation, agents or manager, because I'm not getting anywhere with these guys, and I'm sure they're good at what they do, but it's not working for me. So having to go through that aspect of the industry, where it's one thing for you to get to book a gig, but it's all about the people that help you to get to those places to be able to, get the foot in the door. Does that become a little overwhelming for you too, in that regard, where you have to rely on other people to be able to put in a good word for you? And then if that doesn't go anywhere, then have to find another way to get yourself out there, because one plan didn't work out. So now you have to find another way to get your name out there.
Well, again, during COVID, when I was really starting to hustle on everything, that was one of my things that I decided to do. Was I went out and I got an agent in every different region in all over the US. So I spent a lot of time editing my reels, shooting new footage, going down onto IMDb Pro, researching good agents in different areas, and then meeting people on set too. If you meet an actor that you like and they have a good agent and they, like I literally swapped agents with a guy. I shot a comedy pilot last year and we swapped agents. So he recommended me to his agent in Atlanta, and then I recommended him to the agency that I have here in Oklahoma. So that got us meeting him, got me in the door with them. But I did also blind submit too. I actually researched and found my New Mexico agent just on IMDb Pro, and emailed her with my reel and, talked myself up or whatever. And she called me in for a Zoom just like this. And, we've been working together ever since. So
interesting.
She got me on my favorite show.
That's awesome. Okay. So this is the part that I'm curious about when it comes to the age you're getting yourself across the nation here, because that was one thing I was really not too familiar with here. I had a conversation with Todd Jenkins not too long ago, where he was talking about you have to have an agent in Atlanta, then you have to have an agent in New Orleans, you have to have an agent in Texas, and so on. And you have all these different places that if you want to work, you need to have representation out there. Otherwise, you're not going to get some work. Was that like that in the very beginning when you first came out to LA, when you were starting to book gigs, that if you want to get a work that's going to be taking place out in say in Georgia or in Louisiana, that you had to get an agent out there? Or was that something that was always consistent across the board about getting representation in each of those parts of the states?
I honestly, personally didn't think about it. But I self-submitted to a film that was shooting in San Antonio. This was like 6 or 7 years ago. And so it was right after I moved to LA. I've been in LA, I think like a year or something.
Okay.
So then I flew to San Antonio to shoot this, and I met one of the other actors there. And he's like, is this your first time like traveling for an acting gig? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you should do it all the time. He's like, I do it all the time. There's so much work all over, and it keeps you busy and you're working and blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of the first time I heard about other actors doing that. Because, and also at the time, like Atlanta's like super hot right now, but it was only maybe just becoming that way when I first moved out to LA. So I do think it's kind of like a newer thing for actors, or at least like you have to have like heard from somebody else that you should try doing this too. Now, obviously, if you're like a huge celebrity, or if you're with like the top agency in Los Angeles, they're going to get you auditions all over the country,
Right.
But like all these states have these new incentives and stuff. So they're shooting stuff a lot more out of state, like a lot more.
Right.
That's also been happening a lot since COVID. So I think that this idea of like actors, getting agents and looking outside of LA to shoot is newish. You know what I mean?
Right.
At least in my circle. And talking to people, like I'm telling my friends in LA to do it, because I'm like, I'm getting a ton of stuff, that's not there.
Type of quota that I actually had a conversation with Sam Mirror the other day, where he was telling me that there are certain types of films that come out during certain parts of the season. So in other words, like horror movies may come out more now during the summer as opposed to in the fall, which is most common because of Halloween, or it's some variety of films out there coming out, and even to some degree shows as well too. But I guess my question is that because there's actually a lot, I see that there's a lot more opportunities for filmmakers, actors, producers, and so on, that have more ways for them to get the work done and then be able to have it released through a distributor on a streaming platform and so on. Mm-hmm. So it seems like there's a lot more opportunities in that respect, where there's more work being created, therefore more films, more television shows are being created as well too, and more or less a lot more opportunities. I understand there are now some restricted guidelines now that are in place considering how the landscape has changed. But do you because of how things have changed in that regard, do you feel that positive turn in have that effect on you, where because there's more opportunities, therefore more auditions, and therefore more chances of me getting a part as a result of the landscape changing, creating more opportunities for different various platforms to release these films and television shows?
The only thing that's coming to mind, and this is again going to sound weird, and again, maybe I'm understanding your question right though, kind of sounds like there's more room for stuff to be made quickly, thus then it'll be a lot more crappy material.
Well, I mean, that's a fair thing to point out.
Yes, I can get a job on it, but it's something that I need to keep doing at this point in my career? Is that what you're asking?
No, not necessarily, but you happen to bring up a good point about that, and that's kind of what I was more or less because I'm trying to use it as a general statement, a question here, because yes, that is something that most people know. Well, there's more films coming out. That means more crappy films come out as well too, because they can be released. I understand that respect, and I understand why actors would take on those opportunities, because it's a gig, and I want to do this and then do something else. I understand that, but because there are more opportunities in that respect, where certain films that were probably never going to be made are now being made because there is a niche audience that has a platform that they can all go to this sort of stuff.
Yes. And that's, yes.
Okay.
And I think just the simple fact that the world is becoming more open-minded and, cool, that people's voices are getting heard in niches or, minorities and everything, especially LGBTQ stuff.
Right.
Like I'm thankful for that and having, I do think, there's obviously there's whole new worlds opening and new ideas and everything all the time. Yeah.
And you're starting to feel that actually work in your favor because of those opportunities that are available now for you to be able to audition for parts.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I feel, well, I mean, cause like I said, I'm more of a character too. And I feel like I'm a niche. So, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot more interesting stuff that has been coming about. And, I think is opening doors for people. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now, because you've been in the industry for a number of years now, has your perception about how you look at the industry, look at films in general, or TV for that matter, change along the way, where before not knowing what the industry is like, at least from the inside, now being a part of that engine, if you will, has something about the way you look at that change along the way, maybe for the better or for the worse, or, with more of an educated understanding about how this all works and understand why certain things turn out the way that they do and how certain things are put together and why it takes so long for certain things to come about. So do you have a different perspective on how you look at things now when it comes to the filmmaking and television side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Mainly, especially from having made my own stuff now, so I like to do my main, my favorite characters to perform are comedic, but my favorite genre of movies is horror.
Right.
Like I literally watch 2 or 3 horror movies a day. And I do know that I now versus probably, when I was like 20, have respect for the indie filmmakers, even when like you turn on a movie on Tubi and that somebody probably shot it on their handy cam in their mom's basement. I'm still like, they probably, did actually have some budget and they tried really hard and I can see what they're trying to do. And so I try to put myself, like on the floor of the production.
Right.
And like, so I don't, everybody's film deserves to be watched, I guess is my point. So, and it also, having done that, it does change how you watch stuff too. I think having actually the bigger productions that that I've been on, like where it's like you used to shoot an independent film in Chicago where there was like you and the camera guy and maybe a sound guy if they felt like they wanted to find one, versus like 300-person crews or whatever.
Right.
When you watch stuff now, like you see it kind of is like a curse too, I guess, because it takes you out of it sometimes instead of just like sitting back and like relaxing and then just going into that world. You're going into the world of how did they do that? Or like, I wonder what lens they're using right now. Or was there a guy like holding that over there? Or, like some of the stuff that like looks so fantastic. You're like, was probably like really like jerry rigged with like some guy just standing on a ladder or something. You know what I mean?
I got you.
Like, sometimes it takes you out of it so that you can like try to figure out how they did stuff. But, so I like doing that too, especially in the horror. And I like, cause I do a special effects makeup too on the side. Like I'm self-taught just for fun. Yeah. And so like, I try to figure that out too. I'm like, what is that, an appliance that they're using, or do they sculpt that from hand, or whatever.
Right.
I like the gory ones.
Because I forgot that your favorite genre is horror. I heard that your favorite movie of all time is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Is that still correct? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm actually curious about that too, because I think if I heard you correctly, that you said that if I guess kind of the best way to describe yourself is if you watch that movie, that's kind of like how people can. If I heard it correctly, I think you may have said that watch that film. That's me right there. If I heard that correctly, is that kind of okay? So it's funny because when you said that, I was like, I gotta watch the movie now because I have the movie on Blu-ray as well. And as I'm watching the film, I honestly was trying to see what it was about you that you felt like you saw yourself in that. I think I understand, but here's what I'm actually really curious about here about that movie for yourself because that movie, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about here for Kilograms of Outer Space, that movie came out I think 88 if I recall correctly, somewhere around the late 80s
It's
if I
somewhere
remember.
around there. Now I'm going blank. I think I'm 89, but I might
Yeah,
be.
somewhere around there.
I have it over there somewhere.
And it's done by the Chiesa brothers if I recall correctly here. So who
I
are
just spelled Kyoto brothers.
Kyoto Bros. Thank you. Yeah. So they themselves they specialize in the special effects side of it as well too, which I think a lot of people don't realize that have been featured in a lot of a number of different projects out there.
Puppeteers, yeah, puppeteers.
Yeah, puppeteers. Yes, thank you. So I was watching that movie, and honestly, I was trying to see what it was that you saw yourself in here. And again, how I picked it up here, and you let me know if I'm wrong. The quirkiness that the movie does have, and the what you see is what you get. It's kind of what is the impression that I'm getting off you from watching that film. Because honestly, I was watching the movie, but I was thinking of you the entire time as I was watching the film to kind of get an understanding of your personality, which is why when it's in the beginning of this conversation is that I feel like that's where more of the comedic side of it comes out of it because the movie has a whole lot of it as well. So to this day, I know that this is a movie you hold in such high regard. So I'm wondering now when when you look at that movie, and obviously the film has developed a large cult following because they had the special re-release not too long ago. And then now there are fans out there who are clamoring for a sequel, which the brothers are saying there is an idea for a sequel, but it's all about getting the fundings among other things as well too. So for you now, having so much time pass by and having looking at that movie for yourself, I'm wondering what if you can give more insight about if any sentiments about the film has changed, especially now that you're in the industry where you have seen how things are being put together, that maybe could give you a level of appreciation that you probably didn't have before that you have now for it.
Yeah, no, I still think that movie holds up amazingly.
Yeah.
And this is like so generic reasoning for that, but I think it's because it's clowns and everything is such brightly colored.
Right.
Like I'm actually admitting this publicly, but I just watched The Exorcist for the first time last year. I'd never watched it.
Uh-huh.
And
Did you like it?
So many people claim that that's the scariest movie that they've ever seen. Right. And I wasn't at all. In fact, I was laughing a lot. And I'm a total traitor to horror lovers for saying that. But I mean, Killer Clowns is obviously a dark comedy. I mean, it's clowns for God's sakes. You know what I mean? Right. And it's got perfect comedic timing mixed with horror. Like, I mean, it's just, I feel like it's, because it legit is actually scary too. I mean, and the clowns are so well made. Like they look, there's nothing about them that doesn't look real. Do you agree? I mean, like, I mean, they don't obviously look real because you have
no, I know what you're saying under the context of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't look like marionettes or they don't look like animatronics. Like I mean, in some scenes, I guess.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know. I just really think that they look so legit and like they're such like a unique monster, you know? And then like everything that they put in, because I love the circus too. Like I wanted to be a clown when I was little, but I can't juggle. So I loved the whole clown and the circus act, you know, and then how inventive they were, how they like use the cotton candy and then little popcorn guns and the little, you know, like everything was like thought about and like it was just witty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just witty. But I think it still holds up because it's got that comedy element to it too, you know?
Right.
And just, film has progressed so much. And, they even talk about too, like the younger generation, well, actually, I don't even know how old you are, but, you have to have CGI and stuff now. You can't have any prosthetic or because none of the kids will watch it or whatever, And then I think that's why when I watched The Exorcist, I was laughing because I'm conditioned to that now too. So I watch I watch from the D movie that the kid shot in his mom's basement all the way up to, like major motion pictures and stuff. And so I'm conditioned too. And like The Exorcist, I'm like, whatever. It's funny looking.
Did you watch the director's cut?
Clowns look legit scary. What?
I was asking, did you watch the director's cut?
I don't know if I did.
Because there's two cuts. There's the theatrical cut, and then there's more or less the extended cut, which I think is referred to as the director's cut.
I watched it because it's a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
It's like 3 hours, right?
I think that's the extended cut, so near 3 hours. Well, because one of the major scenes that they added was the scene where Regan was coming down the steps, kind of like a spider.
Yeah.
So that's the one you saw, yeah. Because that wasn't in the original because they didn't have the special effects available at that time. And then once times have changed, they've been able to add that scene and splice it up to make it really presentable. So that was one of the major changes that occurred.
That chick was legit backbending down the stairs, though, right?
I believe so. I don't recall.
I watched but so what was the special effects that they didn't have for that?
I don't remember the exact details. I've seen the movie like maybe 4 times, and I saw them all when I was a kid, and including the extended cut, because my parents, my mom especially, was like, because she was Catholic, or she still is Catholic. She's like, that's real, and the people can. I was like, whatever. So it was. I understand the scariness behind it, and there were elements that were very effective to some degree, but I never, I didn't feel that connection that people had with the movie. I'm sure if I saw it in the 70s when it came out, maybe my perception would have been different.
If I'd seen it when it came out, or if I'd seen it when I was a little kid, it would have been different.
Yeah. Well, I saw it as a kid too, and didn't really have that effect on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, again, I can see your perspective. I don't remember laughing at it, but I do remember thinking like, this looks awful. But my wife,
I still liked. I wasn't bored.
No, I wasn't bored either, but there were elements I thought it didn't work for me personally. It's not one of those films I go back and watch. Like, this is a film you should go watch. I'd rather watch, in your case here, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I connect more with that movie than I would with The Exorcist. But my wife is a huge horror fan, so she is into all that stuff. We actually got a chance to meet Linda Blair over in Florida.
Awesome.
Yeah. So she was actually really nice, really, really nice. Okay, well, so here's what I want to move into next year with you. Outside of because I'm curious to hear about some of your other interests here, because so we've talked about your love for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but I'm actually really curious to see what other things out there that you like that for you helps, at least helps in regards to your acting, in this case, or possibly your writing as well too, that you feel when you go back and watch it, that gives you some ideas and it makes you think about your approach when it comes to the acting or the writing aspect of and I'm not sure if you ever consider doing directing here, but I would imagine that you have a mind that would be that looks at certain shots and how you would set it up and how you would direct it. But I'm not sure if you've actually have ever done that. I think you may have hinted that you did.
I directed my short films too. Okay, like I acted in them, but I directed them. So I basically had to, give shot lists to the camera guy and stuff too. This next thing that I want to do, I'm tossing back and forth on if I want to get a director for it or not, because it's obviously the biggest thing that I'm going to do. And I really want to be able to get into my character a lot more and not have to worry about that.
Right.
But I have it so in my head already that like I can't really like give it to somebody and say direct this and then them feel like they're actually directing, because like that would be like if I'm saying you're the director but you have to do it exactly how I say and every shot, they're not really directing, so why the hell would they want to do it? So I'm torn on that, and now I got sidetracked. What was the question?
Well, so the question was like other interests as far as like other films or shows you watch that help um on how you go about approaching with regards to your acting, writing, and in this case now directing, since you've already confirmed that's what you do. So is there like a template that you go by with on how you like to approach when it comes to the production side of it as well, that you realize that a movie that you have seen or a show that you have seen, you realize I like the way they've done it. I want to try it like that and see if it works for me, because I want to be able to take a story in this kind of path here, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. The other things I've made, I think were pure. Well, the first thing I ever made was this short called One Armed Rabbit, and I guess I wanted to make a thing where I was doing stage combat, or
Okay.
show that I could do stunts or whatever.
Okay.
Or fight. And
was that difficult for you to do?
What?
Was that difficult for you to do?
Well, I mean, I have stage combat training from college.
Okay.
So, and I'm a dancer. So
Okay.
I think it kind of comes a little bit more naturally to me than other people. But I was like, I do comedy. I'm never going to get cast in that. And I was like, it kind of was a challenge, I guess.
Okay.
But then I was like, but I do comedy. So I made it like a dark comedy, and I decided to do the fight scene with just myself. So I'm fighting my own arm. So, which I guess I kind of stole from Evil Dead, but the script is not like Evil Dead in any way, shape, or form.
Right,
and
right.
I am fighting my own arm, but my arm is not me. Actually, you should watch the film. It's only 9 minutes long, and then you'll understand. But if you're going to watch it, I don't want to give any of it away.
So is it okay? I was going to ask you something in relation to the film. Okay.
It's one of those films that you leave and you're like, I don't know what just happened.
Okay.
What I think happened, but I don't know. And that's what I did on purpose.
For you, what's the one thing about yourself that you think when you can look back on, you think, and you can reflect on having more or less positive thoughts about, okay, what I've been able to do here so far, I'm proud of this here. And I'm not talking about specifically with one particular project. I'm talking about like areas in the industry that you have taken on, whether it be acting, writing, directing, going through the audition process, learning to talk to people, and working on the connections. Like, what's the one aspect for yourself that you realize that I've struggled in this here, but now I've gotten better with it, and I'm glad I stuck with it?
I guess it doesn't really have to do with like the actual acting part of acting, but I guess, which we kind of talked about earlier, would be just the struggle of having to teach myself and recognize that I wasn't trying as hard as I could have.
Okay.
And then deal with a little bit of regret from that, because would I be further along in my career if I had not been a dumbass when I was 20? Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think in my 20s, I was waiting for stuff to be handed to me.
Oh, okay. I understand better now. Okay.
And then that's like a lot too. I mean, I think a lot of actors struggle with that. They're like, oh, I'll just get an agent and then it's just going to happen. And I was like, well, I'll just go audition for Second City and then I'll get on and then it'll happen. And it didn't,
right.
It didn't. So, it was like, if I had known then what I know now, I would have worked a lot harder then so that I could be a lot further along now.
I understand. Okay.
I'm very, very proud of how far I have come along in the short period of time since I started really busting ass. You know what I mean? Like, I've never been like lazy and not trying or anything like that. Right. But like, I'm very focused now. And I'm proud of myself for that. I just wish I'd done it earlier.
Okay. So this leads me to another question about how people perceive you, because you kind of hinted at before about one of your agents you said in Chicago that made the comment about how you look and that the type of work you're able to get. When it comes with criticism in that respect, was that hard for you to deal with that at first, or were you more or less mentally prepared that if this guy's looking at me like this, that's not my problem, but I have to learn how to develop the callus to not let that break me for me to be able to move forward and finding work despite what he or she may say?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with like a lot of stuff and like body shaming, I guess. If that goes back to the fact of how he was like, you're not hot enough for this, but you're
Right.
not ugly enough for this. And when I gained like a lot of weight in college, I know, and then we got our first headshots, and that's when I submitted to him. And then when we had our showcase at college, when all the agents come to look at you, and I had lost all the weight, and he also said that too. He's like, I was looking at your headshot, and then you came out on stage, and I was like, oh, she's not a big girl. Oh, cool. And he's like, and then I was like, so is that why you want to represent me now? Because I'm not overweight anymore? Or what's the deal with that? It's just, there's just little seeds that people plant all the time and they don't even know.
Right.
But, so yeah, so like I struggle with that too. And then there's part of me that's like, oh, well, I wanted to do comedy, so I should be fat. So just stop caring. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, don't whatever. And then like during COVID too, actually, when all this has been been getting like the biggest thing ever, like I stopped exercising at the beginning of COVID. Like I didn't exercise for 2 years, and I was just like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm like, I'm booking stuff or whatever. But then now I'm at the point I'm like, I don't feel good about myself.
Right.
So there's like always this like back and forth. And then I'm like, well, if I get in shape, does that mean I'm going to stop getting cast and stuff too? Like,
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Like this stuff all like goes through your mind, and it is 10 times harder for a girl. I mean, because they don't, like it's, and that's like proven in the roles that are, you were talking about how do I feel there's more opportunity for different ethnicities and for LGBTQ and all this stuff too. But I still feel like the women roles, like when you read the breakdown for roles, and now I don't see all the super big ones because I'm not an agent and they're the only ones who have access to that. But the ones that I do be able to see, they're still, and especially in my age range, are just mom. Her whole being is to be a mother. She exists just to be a mother.
So it reads like that?
I mean, like basically, like every single role. And I mean, like they're 9 out of 10 of them, the character's name is mother. You know what I mean? And I'm like, there's so much. I mean, like we're human beings too that do things too. And I'm not a mother, and I don't really want to be, in all honesty. So like, even when I get called in for those roles, I'm like, I'm thankful the audition, but I don't want to do this part. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's disappointing because it's like, then you read like the character breakdown for the guys and stuff, and they're like, he's this really cool guy, and his job is like, he's a space engineer, and he dresses really neat, and he's unique, and all of his friends think he's funny, and blah, blah, blah. And then if it was the same thing for the woman, it would be like a woman space engineer. Like, I mean, it just, like, it's like, I feel like the writers can't even like come up with descriptive words.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's a girl. All I see is a girl. I don't know.
I see what you're saying. I know what you mean. I had a conversation with a writer, producer, and actress in Catherine Lee McEwen a while back, and she had done a movie called Solitary, and I think it's a really good film. But the one thing that, what was that?
I said I think I've seen that, but you'd have to refresh me what it's about.
Well, it deals with the movie takes place in England. It deals with a young woman who is problematic because the family had lost their mother, I believe through cancer, if I recall correctly, and her sister is really successful in terms of being a really powerful lawyer out in England. She has a really strained relationship with her father, and then we kind of find out what the issue was. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I'm not sure if I want to feel I want to reveal it, because that ending is what helps, kind of puts the pieces together for you, for the story to make more sense as it progresses there. But it basically deals with her becoming a problem.
To see, I'm Googling it right now. My thing is that I told you I watched so many movies, I can't remember the titles of them.
Yeah.
So I always write down movies that I watch.
Well, the thing is that the character that Catherine was playing, it's a character that she wrote. She wrote the script. Her husband directed the movie. But the thing is that the character, as she was written, was automatically problematic. Like, she was a drunk, and she was, she was very irresponsible. But a lot of the people that she was bringing this story to and presenting the script to help, finance the film, they were saying, well, we want to make her, become like this, she's like this flower in a garden, and all of a sudden gets, something happens to her along the way, which then, forces her to become an alcoholic and then become problematic halfway through the story. And she's like, well, I don't want to do a story like that. This girl is like this from the very beginning. And then we see a progression from her character from where she started to where she ends up now. But it leaves a very questionable ending about, can you still side with the character? Because there's a lot of gray areas to that character.
Yes.
But she wrote a very, very good character, in my opinion. And when she was telling me about her experiences and having to listen to a lot of guys, it was mostly guys. I think she said it was all guys that were telling her, well, does she have to be like that from the very beginning? I mean, can we just make her like a very sweet girl and then something happens? Like, that was a consistent request, and she denied it. And I'm glad that she did, because the film that I came across was beautiful. But the point that I'm hearing with what you're saying, I agree with you 100%, because having heard that from Catherine, it really opened up my eyes more about the critiques that come with actors, especially female actors, where they have a story that you mentioned before, a space engineer, but they don't add the other elements, very driven, very quirky, a great personality. A lot of people like her, so on and so forth. She's not married. There's no baggage around her other than the fact that maybe she's overworking herself, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And when she written this character who was completely broken, but there is somewhat of a redemption story to her, but the redemption story is very questionable because of what she does in the film that leads to quite a question. It's not something that a lot of people are willing to take the risk on in that respect.
Right.
So, and this is one of the reasons why I asked the question for you, because what you mentioned earlier about your agent in Chicago telling these things here, I'm not sure now, because because you're trying to create your own work, and you want to make a movie that you yourself want to be a part of and you yourself want to see. Has that become harder for you to be able to get that started off the ground, to be able to get that done because of the ideas you have for the story that you want to make? Because people will say, well, it's a good story, but can we make this person a male instead of a female? Because this would work better for this market. Like, I'm wondering if you have experienced a little bit like that in trying to develop your own stories for it to become into production.
I kind of have an example of that. Well, I mean, so this next thing that I've written that I would like to make is a gender bender of the Joker.
Okay.
And I wrote this before the Joker movie came out and was supposed to shoot it before the Joker movie came out. And just want to say that, but then was not able to because of some situations with the production. But so it's not a ripoff of the Joker, that the movie with Joaquin Phoenix, but it is dark like that. But
dark comedy in that respect?
It's a dark comedy, yeah.
Okay.
Except for, I don't know if I think that the Joker was a dark comedy. I think that was just a pure drama, personally. But so it's a gender bender of the Joker, and it just has two characters in it, a female Joker and a male version of Harley Quinn. And I don't ever say the characters' names or anything. Like, if you pick up that they're these two characters because you're like, fans of the comic, then you will. But the story is completely my own of what happens or whatever. But a lot of people, not everybody, when I tell them that, they're like, oh, so you're just making yourself Harley Quinn. And I'm like, no, the Joker and Harley Quinn are two completely different characters.
Right.
And the whole thing, it's all about like dominance and different, the status in their relationship, you know, who has higher status over whatever.
Right.
So like, you can't just say because I'm a female and I'm going to be playing the Joker that I might as well just say I'm Harley Quinn. Does what I'm saying trying to like, do you get where I'm going? That it's
I do understand where you're going with this here. Yeah.
And then these have been mainly men who have said that. They're like, why don't you just play Harley Quinn? And I'm like, I don't want to play that character. I want to play the Joker. And the Joker is its own character. And this is about the fact of gender bending and putting a female on top of a man.
Yeah.
Not like that.
No,
but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Although that scene will be in there. No, I'm just But do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Well, it's like, it's hard for them to see that. They're like, no, you can't take this iconic male character and have a woman do it, because then it will just be this girl being a girl. And no, it's not.
So are they afraid that it's not going to sell, that a movie of that sort won't appeal to an audience? Is that what their concern is? Or they just flat out disagree that female characters can't do that?
Yeah, I get the impression that they're like, a female can't play the Joker. If she tries to be the Joker, it's just going to come off like she's Harley Quinn. And we already have that movie.
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, did you read my script? It has nothing to do with that. Like, it has nothing to even do with that. Right. But these, again, are not like people that I'm like pitching it to that have money or investors or something like that.
Right.
They're just like conversations I have with other, you know, because I'm still trying very hard to find who I want to play the Harley Quinn character. Mm-hmm. So I had like a couple of guys cast, and then it fell through, and then they weren't really right. And now I'm like being like, do I want to go with somebody more like this or whatever, you know what I mean? So I've shopped it around to people and let them read it. And then I get that a lot from guys that are like, well, aren't you just going to be like Harley Quinn? And I'm like, no. So, but the script has won some awards, so it is a good script. This is not my writing. And them being like, I don't get it. It's good.
Critiques for yourself, with the work that you do, projects that you audition for, that you're part of. I'm not sure how you, for yourself, handle critiques when it comes to the work that people take notice that you are in, whether it's directed at you directly, or if it's a project you were a part of that you're very proud of, you know, everyone worked really hard on, and then people dismiss it. I'm curious to see how you go about it for yourself, and how you've developed the at least the ability to not take some things into consideration, or not take things to heart, and how have you learned to handle that as you move throughout the years and dealing with that sort of stuff?
I've never had a bad critique, so I don't know. If we're talking about like online, like negative comments and stuff like that too, like I can't deny that I had one thing I was in go viral. Like I chopped my scene out of this TV show that I was in, and it went viral in another country, and they were talking bad about it. And I got really upset that day and was like, should I delete this from YouTube? Even though it like had like all these, you know, like I said, it went viral, so it was cool, you know.
Right.
I ended up just shutting the comments off so that I couldn't see them. I don't know. There's some phrase that people have said that, you know, like, you've hit it when the haters come out, or, you know, something like that. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to be like, there's always going to be somebody who's like jealous or whatever. So, I mean, I obviously, if I see them, it sucks, but I try to, you know, just walk away. I don't know, focus on the good comments.
It's kind of, I know it's not an easy question to answer at times because it's I hate to say this, but it is part of the game. And because I do review for films as well too. And one of the biggest things I've learned a great deal is, especially after I started talking to more people in the industry, that critics who talk in that manner of like, this is not worth your time. It's not worth your money. If you have better things to do with time, then skip, like that form of talking, in my opinion, still bothers me to this day, even though they're not, it's not a film that I worked on.
Yeah. Well, somebody just did that on some random chick. Like I posted, I shouldn't say this because that's like bad. One of the movies that I was in recently, they left a comment. I saw it the other day. It's terrible. And I don't even know who this girl is.
Right.
And then I went to her page and it was so funny because she had this like post that was like, one of my favorite things is to scroll through my friends list and see that they're doing well. It just makes me so happy to see when people are living their best life and doing well. And I so wanted to leave a comment. I'm like, oh, that it really makes you happy. That's why you go to strangers' pages and leave negative comments, but I didn't. And I honestly, I deleted her comment too. Cause I was like, you're just like raining on my parade and it doesn't really matter. Part of me is like, for archive purposes, I shouldn't have done that because I just deleted like reality and you need to accept it. But I was like, whatever. And then, and I don't know, it's hard to, and maybe this makes me an idiot. Like if a project I'm in gets like a bad review, then I'm just like, okay, on to the next one or whatever. It's a lot harder to take if you directly get a bad review though, like if they're like, this character was outrageously annoying and blah, 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 blah. Those I'm going to take a lot more to heart personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do think that just being blatantly negative for the sake of being negative is just like, you're obviously just have nothing else better to do. You know what I mean? Give an honest critique or be like, and that's what I'm saying too, about how I watch those movies that are super low budget, that somebody just wanted to make a movie, like I write I told you I can't remember the names of stuff. So on my Facebook, after I finish a movie, I write the name of the movie and then I have a star thing that I give it 1 out of 10 stars. I've only given a 6 or lower like twice.
Yeah.
And I judge it based on all of that though. Like I have given a movie that had like a $2 budget and was shot on a handy cam the same rating as freaking Jurassic Park. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you have to like take all that stuff into consideration.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. Like these people, they don't even know how to take it into consideration because they don't know anything. So it's like, what is the point of even like, nah.
Well, I mean, again, that's I know exactly what you mean. And so, so when I do reviews for films, because I used to think that, you gotta have a rating system. So that way people know how you feel about the film. So, you I try to be creative by coming with my own, rating system. And I thought it was cool at the time. Now I'm like, I don't know. I think I should probably change it all together because I don't have this. I do and I don't, if that makes any sense about how I want to go about rating a movie. But one thing I've noticed that I have done a whole lot less of is, so I have a 4 rating system. Solid cheers, raise a glass, worth a shot, and not worth a shot.
Yeah.
So, and I used to think that one was pretty cool because I think I wanted that take on reviewing for me. But the more I started doing this here, I started to realize that the rating system doesn't matter at all. It really doesn't because obviously film is subjective, but what really I started to notice for me is that I don't like to use the last rating at all anymore, which not worth a shot. I think the last time I did it was a film that I reviewed earlier this year, if I recall correctly. And even then I put it as like major preface, like, hey, when I use this rating, this does not mean don't go see the movie. It means see the film, but it just didn't work for me. And I realized if I have to explain that for other people to understand where I'm coming from, then it's almost irrelevant. I'm not sure if that's the best way to say it, but I had a big problem with that and having to do that. And then I look back at the review. I'm like, I mean, it wasn't saying terrible things, but I was saying what didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I still was saying, check out the film regardless, because I want these guys to get success.
Yeah, that's like exactly what mine was too. Cause I used to just put the name that I'd watched it. And then like everybody kept being like, well, is it good or is it not? Should I watch it? Blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start putting little stars. But basically I'm like, if it gets a 7, and then I started like everything's like 7.1 or 7.6 or something. And then my friend's like, you always give everything a 7. I'm like, basically, if it's a 7, it's worth watching. If it's anywhere 7 or above. And I was like, and I've honestly only given I gave one movie like a 2 because it was like just literally like this guy made this movie just to be a homophobic bashing. Like, I mean, it was just purely, I was like, it was on Tubi or something. And I was like, how is this movie even allowed to have come out? I was like, it purely was just for that. So that's like the only thing, you know what I mean? But I am at the point now too, where I'm like, these numbers don't mean anything. I'm like, if you're my friend and you watch my stupid post that I watched a movie, like, and you see I gave it a 7 or above, then if you're bored, watch it. You know what I mean? Well,
I mean, again, that's the thing about critiques now. Excuse me. That it's well, here's the thing. I'm not gonna say who it is here, but there was someone that I respect on YouTube that hosts a show, and they've directed a movie. And the reason why they directed the film was because they wanted to experience what other filmmakers go through when it came to making movies, so they have a better understanding on how the process works. Excuse me.
I think I might know who you're talking about.
So when I listen to this person talk, they're very insightful about the industry. They have connections where they are able to kind of hint on certain things here and there, which helps me learn about other areas of the industry that is very educational for myself. But there are times where they're very good at critiquing, in my opinion. And then there are times where just like, this is awful. It is the worst film ever made. I'm like, dude, have you seen one of the worst films ever made? What you saw was not the worst film ever made. Is it a good movie? Probably not. But as far as all the other aspects of the film, the production aspect of it, the acting, the special effects, and so on and so forth, that's some high quality stuff that is not easy to make. Somewhere along the way, you have forgotten how hard this stuff is for you to talk like that.
Right, exactly.
So I understand that there are people out there that you can't recommend everything to everybody, despite your effort. Hey, I love this movie, and I've been through that so many times where I recommend a film and people are like, that was not very good. This is one of the great, so I've had that many times. But I also I fear one of my biggest thing now in doing this here that I've started to realize what I want to do differently is that, not to say I want to educate people, but I feel it's important to highlight the journey of what it takes to make a movie, to make a television show, stand up, and whatever the case may be. That's why, and I've said this before, for anyone who watches the show, and I repeat this, I apologize, but I'll give the Cliff Notes version. But I'm a very strong proponent about listening to the story of what, in this case for yourself, and what it took for you to get to this production, the next production, the struggles you went through to get there, and understanding that once you got to this point, was it satisfying for you? Because, I got the job, but I got the job and it paid well, but then the project, it was okay for me, but I got something out of it here. So there's a lot of layers behind all that in that thought process that I don't think a lot of people really understand. So I'm more interested in a lot of the gray areas in a person's career that they make, about choices they make in their career. When they work on a movie, I saw the movie, it wasn't very good, but why did you make the movie? Because you were great. The movie wasn't very good, but clearly you weren't happy with the movie. What happened? Obviously, there are some things they're not going to reveal for a number of reasons. They don't want to throw names out there and throw people on their bus. I understand all that. But I think that if you have an understanding of how that works, I hope in time people will be much wiser to that and not look at a film and be dismissive about it. But my biggest problem is that a lot of filmmakers are dependent on what's the rating on IMDb, Amazon, and so on, because a lot of other people look at that and say, well, what kind of films have you made? Have they been well received? Yeah. But then you also come to find out too that there are some shitheads out there who may purposely put a bad review to lower the score, and in turn may cause a production that you were working so hard on and preparing for maybe pull from you because, hey, all the shit that you just did last year, it's getting murdered in the reviews, and we can't have that in this production here because you have a bad reputation now of doing this. And then you find out none of the stuff makes any sense. It's just all mundane stuff that this was bad, that, but they don't go into specifics, but they're not going to read that. They just want to see what the star total is. That part bothers me a great deal. So when it comes to critique, it's something that I noticed that with a lot of people, especially when I ask writers and directors on how they feel about it, it varies, but it's always consistent is that they understand what it takes. They understand what this brings, and they understand that what you have to be up and dealing with here. But if you come from a perspective as an actor where you're just working on a project and moving on to the next one, I understand that perspective too. But when you're a director, where your lifeline is making a movie and you depend on that, but you also depend on people saying good things about the film, knowing that you've done a good work, and that brings it down because the scores from other people who don't like the movie and say all these horrible things about it, they're not understanding how this whole effect. And there are a lot of people who will say they should never do another movie again. So if they don't make another film, the world is better off that way. Like what?
Like, yeah, why don't you go out and make a movie? A lot of those people have no idea. But I mean, that's not even just for like the in movie industry. I mean, like any job, like people are just like, why is the suitcase that I bought? I just said that because there's a suitcase right there. I was like, why is the suitcase I bought like the zipper not snagging? You know what I mean? Like, how hard is it to? It's like, you have no idea what it goes into making a suitcase. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, that's why it's like, it's interesting that I guess there is like reviews for everything now.
Yeah.
I was going to be like, but yeah, it totally affects everything because it is. I mean, like obviously the movie industry is like a popularity.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah. But I mean, and that's the thing too, that because I'm not someone who's in the industry by any means here, but I love it so much. But I also know there's a lot of dark areas and very gray areas, and there's a lot of great things about it as well too. And you hear these wonderful stories that what certain people had gone through to make a movie that most people tend to overlook. And the only way you're able to tell those stories, well, they're not going to know by the word of mouth, or they're not going to go online to do the research. That's what I do because I love doing that. But we have to serve it in a way that's digestible for them. So let's make a movie about it, or let's make a TV show about it so they can see it. But then the problem is that people are stupid. If they see that these certain events occurred, they believe that's how exactly it happened, but they're not understanding there are liberties that are being taken to adjust for telling the story for the narrative that they're going for on the small screen and the big screen.
Right.
And they think that what they see is legitimate because all they're seeing is the final product, but they don't understand the story that went behind that process too. I don't know if it's a realistic goal for me to I put that out there to, and I don't mean like put it in the universe. I don't believe in that stuff, but I'm just saying about putting it out there for people to be aware of it, to be cognizant about how this stuff actually works. It's not easy. And people will say it many times. Making shitty films is hard. Making great films is just as hard, if not harder, but it goes both ways. Mm. So, when I'm listening to you talk, I'm really interested about the ups and downs that you're going through and how you deal with that, because that to me is a really, really important rather than the actual product itself. Don't get me wrong. I love Bullshit. I think it's a great movie. I personally do like it. But I know a lot of people will say, well, you're just saying that because you have a good relationship with Brett. Yes, I do, but that's not the reason why I like the film. So, and there's a lot of stipulations that people will perceive it that way. But I've also seen films that Brett has done that I did not like, that I've told him myself, I didn't like this movie. And let me tell you why. And I've given him a list of things. So now he knows that I saw the film and I'm not bullshitting him because I've done my due diligence in that respect. But not that many people will do that.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I told you before about, I like to do my research about talking to who I'm talking to, because another problem that I have with, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to take it away from you here, but,
Oh no.
I was just, the point I'm getting is that when I see people talking about said products, it's a lot of curated stuff. Tell me what it was like working with this director, and how did you get into the role? And I understand those are fair questions to ask, but
But
when
you have to watch your tongue in your response.
right,
That's what you're getting at. Right. Yeah.
so you have to watch with what you say, and I understand there are reasons for that. I do understand that, but the problem that I have with it is that it's generic. And how many times have you seen a film where you saw an interview that the person that you saw being interviewed said something like, "What was it like working with Spielberg? He was great. I'm going to see the movie now because he said working with Spielberg." Who really believes in that stuff? Like, who really thinks that way?
Or that you hear the person be like, "Oh, they were the best. They were such a beautiful director to work with," and then you hear of some drama on the set, and
and again, like I think the times have changed a great deal. Like where we have platforms like this where you could have an actor come on to a podcast of any sort, and they don't have to do those curated stuff. And they can talk about, well, I went to McDonald's the other day and I bought myself a burger. I hadn't had a McDonald's burger in a while, and I had to take a shit right away. Like things like that to me is much more interesting. And then I had to go to the premiere later that night, and I had a bad case of diarrhea from that McDonald's meal. That to me is much more interesting because now I have something that I can connect with that premiere that I'll remember because of the journey that what that person had to go through to get there and what their experience was like. Whether I like the film or not, that may or may not be relevant, but I have something that I can connect with and be able to remember or possibly relate to that. So it's a lot deeper for me personally in that regard. But that's why it's important that when I ask you these questions, why it's much more interesting for me to learn about those gray areas, because I think I get to learn more about you as a person rather than, well, tell me what it was like working on Bullshit, because that was a great movie. Let me know what you felt like. I don't think I can learn from you on
also
that.
see that the path to get somewhere is not pretty. I mean, some people it is, but
far in between, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I realized, like, well, I'm an open book, like there's no reason to bullshit.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. Well, so I'm actually curious about your perspective on that here when it comes to the interview side of it for yourself, because I have come across a few with yourself, but I'm not sure how you personally feel about it. And I'm not sure if you're comfortable answering this question, but I'm just curious about how you feel about that engine of promoting something where someone is asking you a question about, so you were on the show, what was it like working on the show? You work with this director, what was it like working with this director? Like having those type of questions being thrown at you and for you to have to answer them under those circumstances because it's required. So I'm curious to see what your perspective on that is like.
In all honesty, I have not had the opportunity yet to be asked to promote or been like contacted by producers or something and said, hey, these people want to interview you for the movie. So I'm not at that level yet, I guess I would say, in all honesty. I choose myself to promote on my own because, self-promotion, I guess, you know what I mean? So I don't know if I can answer that question because I don't really feel like I've been in that situation. I mean, I've obviously been asked what it's like to work with somebody. I don't feel like I have I have had a bad experience on set, and it wasn't necessarily bad. It was just that it made me feel bad about myself, and I didn't know why. But I do know that I won't tell you what that was if you want me to, because I don't want to. Yeah, you're right. I don't want to say anything negative, but I'm not going to pretend that stuff was amazing.
Peaches and cream.
Yeah. But I think I can't say that, man. If I was like, I don't know. It's just it's such a different beast when you're dealing with productions that are that huge. You know what I mean? Like I'm on this TV show. I'm going to be on this TV show or something, but you know, like I said, they're not going to, I'm one and done, you know, like, well, the show's over anyway, but so, I mean, you know, but so it'd be different if I was the lead on the show. And I obviously would talk great about it because I'd want you to watch it because it makes my career go further, you know, if we're being honest, you know, but if the situation was horrible and every day I was going to set and I wanted to kill myself because I was being treated so badly, I probably wouldn't do it anymore. And I don't think that it, you know, it wouldn't be worth it. And I don't think it would get to that point anymore.
So
if that makes sense. Is that what
it does make sense. Yeah. I know. I understand where you're coming from this here. Okay. So I'm really curious for yourself and how you, there's
projects that I've done that I've regretted.
So that's kind of leading me to my next question here. So I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not sure if you're the type of person that goes back and watches the things you've done in the past, for whatever those reasons may be. That if you watch a movie that you've done, that you maybe reflect on, like, you know, the film wasn't that good, but the experience was phenomenal. So I can see why certain things didn't work out because people they were, you know, we're supposed to be doing this didn't work out. So you have something to go off of here. Or you watch a movie that you really like that you were part of, or a show that you were part of, maybe the experience wasn't that great. Or if you go back and watch it, purely go back and analyzing how you had approached your acting skills, if you will, and you realize, okay, I could have done this a little bit better, but I know now that if I get another role like this, or if I go for an audition of this sort, then I can work and tighten these little areas to better my acting skills, if that makes any sense. So do you go back and watch your old stuff?
I don't go back and watch like whole movies. And to be honest, some of the movies I don't even watch. Okay. I don't really like watching myself, I guess, because then I get super judgmental. I did watch, though. I do remember watching this movie Drifted that I actually just won like a Best Actress award at a film festival.
Oh, congrats.
That was the first movie that I watched where I was like not watching myself, you know? Okay. And I was like, I was like, wow, I'm good. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was like, I didn't even feel, I mean, I did drink like a gallon of whiskey right before the show. No, I'm just kidding. But so now though, going back and watching the footage from it, because I was like, I wonder if there's any footage that I could put on, because it's a dark drama. I was like, I wonder if there's any footage I could use for this thing I had to submit, because somebody asked me if they could see me doing that. And I was like, oh, no. I watched the footage and I was like, no. And you know what it is though, is that because it's like old, it's that same thing with The Exorcist. It's like the quality of the actual film. I'm just like, it just doesn't, you know, like, and maybe also I'm younger. I don't know. Like, so I'm like, I don't ever want to watch this again now, even though like, I literally thought it was like the best thing I'd ever done, you know, when it came out.
What happens if someone comes out, like, let's say it's a relative of yours, friend of yours says to you, I want to see this movie that you were in, but I want to watch it with you because I have questions I want to ask you about what had happened, or, you know, what you were going through at that time. Would that be something you would consider doing in watching one of your own work with someone else that's going to maybe just want to get your perspective about what had happened in terms of the story, in terms of what was going on behind the scenes, not necessarily for gossipers, but really purely for the purpose of like, can you tell me what that experience was like for you on X, Y, and Z?
I think I would do that with like one of my comedy stuff. I don't think I'd want to, I actually, you know, and this Drifted film, like it deals with like rape and there's gun violence and all this other stuff. And I've seen that movie twice. I saw it at the premiere, and then I saw it because it was in a film festival that I went to. And my mom sat next to me watching me almost get raped. And that was, it sucked. It was like a horrible experience, you know? I mean, like I'm not, I told you, because I watched so many horror movies and stuff. Like, I'm so like, it's not that I was like fazed by what I was watching, but I was like, my mom isn't even able to tell if I'm doing a good job as an actor because she's so uncomfortable watching this. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you want like your parent to be like proud of you.
Right.
And then you're like, which I told you, I was like, I felt like so proud of my performance in that. And it's like, and I'm all for movies like that because they are slice of life and they open your eyes to the dark, horrible things that really go on in the world. Like, get out of La La Land. This shit happens in the real world, you know?
Right.
But it's like, my mom didn't see that. And she just saw, you know, and so I would not do that. I would not do that again. No.
So was that an awkward conversation after watching the film?
We didn't even talk about it afterwards. She was just like, good job. And
oh, so what's
like,
one
I even
thing?
like kind of forgot about those scenes, which is like super messed up. Like, she's literally right next to me, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about this part.
What's one thing for you that you would not do at all, with as far as a part's concerned? Because I would think that apart from, you know, what most female stars I've heard before about how they're getting parts for, you know, being a promiscuous woman that, you know, they don't want to do. They want to do more serious roles, more roles that have more meat behind them. But for yourself, what would be the one thing that you would not want to do at all, even though if the pay would make it worth your while, if that makes any sense?
Well, I obviously want to do porn, but we're not talking about that. I'm assuming.
No.
Like, I'm totally good with nudity and everything too, except for if it's like kind of uncalled for. And that's kind of one of the things, to be honest, one of the projects that I regret doing. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And then, man, like stuff where it's like you have to be like the racist person, or I got called in for a role that was called Karen, you know, to play a Karen. And I was like, no, I'm not a Karen. So I didn't do it. I didn't do the audition, but that was like stupid, you know, it only paid like $50.
Oh.
You know, I was just like, I don't even know why this person thinks I would do this, but whatever. But no, I mean, I don't know. That's tough, you know, because, and then everything's like a learning experience too.
Right.
You know, so it's like to sit there and be like, well, I wouldn't play a racist person, but it's like that film is going to be teaching a lesson, or, you know, opening people's eyes to something that happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, somebody's got to play that role. So I would do that, I guess, you know, for that. But if it was just like blatant, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess I don't know what would be my line. I'd have to, it would all depend on a specific example.
I see. You know? Okay. But it just depends on the circumstances.
Have a specific.
Like, no, I honestly didn't. Because I don't know. I think it varies from person to person.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because you mentioned yourself, you don't have a problem. In this case, we're talking about nudity. You don't have a problem doing nudity so long as it serves well for the purpose of the story and the character. That I understand. But again, there are some women out there going to say that don't want to do that at all. And a lot of times, I think it's because, you know, the person may have a good body, and I don't want my body to be the focus. I want to do a character that can be X, Y, and Z, rather than you got a great body, but we need a new scene for the scene. And I can understand that perspective as well.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying. Because it's like, if there's no reason for them to be naked, then why are you doing it? But then also at the same time, if it's like, this person would clearly be naked right now, why are you that makes it unrealistic too. So that's why I'm like, I'm just all about like whatever would be realistic in the situation and whatever, obviously doing a slapstick comedy, that's completely different. But like, but no, just to like be like, oh, I need this to get this rating for my movie. I don't like that.
I gotcha. For you, what's a film that you watched growing up that you may have had good feelings towards, and then when you watch it again later on, you realize, man, times are different then, and this does not work well for me anymore. The reason I'm pointing out here is because I want to get your perspective, because we're talking on the subject of like how women are being viewed. Like when I was a kid growing up, I remember there was a movie that I saw that I thought was hilarious, and then I realized I don't think it holds up very well at all. I'm trying to think of the movie. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but it dealt with a woman who was I remember what it was. I'm gonna take it back. It does hold up well, but it holds up well for the reasons why I think it's ahead of its time. But I don't think a lot of people saw the movie, and that was Serial Mom. That was directed by John Waters.
I love that movie.
I love that movie.
That's like seriously like one of my top.
That's a fantastic.
Just watched it like last week.
That's a great movie, and so I take back when I say it doesn't hold up. It does hold up. I was thinking of another movie, but when you look at that, when I look at that film, that's a movie that I remember as a kid. I saw it when I was in elementary school. It was the first time I ever heard the word cocksucker, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I use it in school. So that's a whole different story for another day. But when I saw that movie, the reason why I thought the film was so good was because I think it was Kathleen Turner. Yeah, it was Kathleen Turner. She was more or less the villain, but she kind of wasn't.
Yeah.
And you could say that, yes, she is a strong female character because she is, but that's the complexity behind the character, that you're supporting her, but what she's doing is wrong. And I remember as a kid, I connected with that right away. And that's when I learned who John Waters was. And I realized Pink Flamingo, among other things as well, but Crybaby, all that stuff. And I remember thinking like, this movie should be a hit. And I found that it wasn't, and no one had saw it. And I was blown away as to why no one saw the film. But I'm wondering now, making a movie like that today, would that film be released today under the context that we get of that movie, where she murders people that she doesn't like, and there are people who are after her, you get the nosy neighbors and so on. So there's all these different
well, I don't think that aspect would keep it from, because we know how popular the horror community is. But it's a satire, I mean, like
it is a satire though, but I mean, like
all of that,
the commentary on that movie, and like I say, I think that movie was way ahead of its time. But
I don't think, sorry to cut you off, but I knew what you were trying to go with by this question, and I don't think that movie is a good example of it.
Okay.
I think that movie is pretty untouchable. I mean, I don't think it's making fun of itself, and
right.
I think it would take someone who's pretty freaking thick to get offended by it. And not get what they're trying to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
I unfortunately can't think of, but I was just watching some movie the other day though, that I liked when I was a kid. And I was like, God, every single thing out of this guy's mouth is like super sexist and like misogynistic. And she's just like, yeah. And just like eating it up, Yeah. And I'm like, man, if I was in that situation, and I probably ate it up when I was little too, but I was like, if I was in that situation right now, I would definitely like punch the guy. So yes, I can't think of an example, but definitely is happening. I mean, there's definitely, like even the stuff too, like all the Mel Brooks movies I love, know, but
yeah, I do too.
Like, now you rewatch them, and I still rewatch them, and I don't care personally, but there's so much misogynistic and just like bad jokes in there and racist jokes. And but it's like we're not really allowed to make jokes as much anymore in this day and age, you know.
Right, well, I mean, the point I was trying to get at, and I think you understood what I was trying to come with here, but you know, like a film like Serial Mom, you know, considering the plot synopsis and considering the characters, you know, I mean, I think about it. Can you make that movie today with under the exact same, you know, beat for beat story that we got when they came out in '94, I believe is what it was. But can you make that movie today? Can it still be the same film that we saw from that era? Because times were different back then, and times are completely different now. And the thing is, and the reason I'm pointing this out here is because so much has changed along the way, and I think a lot of it a lot of it has changed for the better in terms of, you know, we need more representation, and I am 100% for that. But then as a result of that, I think to some degree, certain things that had worked back in the older times, although you can have a perception of how you may look at that, like the Wayans brothers, an example that I brought up before, where a lot of things they were doing may be considered to be, you know, in poor taste, but I still find their stuff hilarious. Can it be considered poor taste? Depending who you ask. But can you make a movie like Don't Be a Menace that came out in 94, 93, I think it was, no, 94, 95, somewhere around there, and have it released today? Probably not, because of how times have changed nowadays, but people still hold that film in high regard, those that are fans of the family. So for me, like, I feel like there's certain things that we've gotten before that we consider to be classics. We don't know if we can ever get those movies made again today because the climate has changed. But because the climate has changed, I do think for the better. But I don't know if it's gonna be controversial for me to say this here, but I still feel like that we're still trying to get our footing and how we are going about it, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. That's what I was saying about how, like, I don't know if this is set in stone, or are we casting this way to fill a quota,
Right.
or are we casting this way because they're the best for the part and
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, if you made that movie today and it was set in this time period, I mean, if you're literally saying if we remade Serial Mom exactly the same, it was still set in the 90s, it was still, you know, if you literally remade
Well, not remake it. Like if the movie never existed.
That story, but put it in nowadays times.
Right. Like if Serial Mom never existed back in the 90s and John Waters made the film today, could that film work today under this climate here and put it in present times? That's what I was referring to. Like, I'm just using an example that these films.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would because, I just don't think. Yeah, no. I mean, it depends on where you are too, I guess. Like, right. I feel like some areas of the U.S. are still stuck in the 90s, behind
the times.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So, I'm even just thinking of little things though, how they would do that, like how like Chip works in like a VHS video store. I'm like, what would his job be? He like makes YouTube videos, or like, you know, right. And like right. Just even like the little details of it. But I know obviously the main through line is the Serial Mom part, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, there's stuff that definitely cannot be remade now. And and some of it, like, some of it to me is just a little too much. Like how I said, like, I feel like people can't take a joke anymore. And it's kind of disappointing to me.
I do agree. I really do. I'm the person that loves risk in comedy. Take the chance and throw a joke out there and, you know, see if it lands. I mean, of course, do it in a way that will. I'm not sure if it's maybe the best way to say it, do it in good taste. But when I say that, I'm not trying to say, you know, be considerate, but be considerate that the joke is meant to be funny, that make people laugh. That's how I'm referring to it as here. But I that's why for me, I always refer back to the 90s, in my opinion, was like the best decade of film because you had everything come out at that time. You had some of the most risque things among other things as well, too. At least that's how I look at it, in my opinion.
The thing that I think is happening now is that you have a choice when somebody makes a joke. You right. have a choice to hear it, and it's called a joke, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Right. You have a choice to, even if it's not funny, like it's not like laugh out loud funny to you.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a choice to either take it as a joke or you have a choice to take it and get offended.
Right.
And I feel like nowadays, the choice to get offended is the more popular choice. And it's just it's almost like people are bored. So it's like, I'm going to get offended at your joke because I'm so bored. I need to start some drama. When it's like, you knew it was a joke. Like, what, like, that's just kind of how I feel. I feel like a lot of stuff. And I know not everything. I'm not like a total inconsiderate jerk here. You know what I mean?
Right,
But
right.
a lot of stuff I feel like is blown out of proportion now.
I do agree. Yeah, I do agree with you on that as well. So, okay, I want to learn more about your perspective now on taking on new challenges for yourself. For example, like you talked about the idea of you directing a movie that you are very passionate about with the script that you've written here for that more or less the Harley Quinn and Joker type storyline you had written here. Taking on a challenge like that for yourself, because of the experience you've had with making a short film where you've directed those for yourself and then you've written movies or written the shorts, written other things as well too.
Mm-hmm.
With the possibilities of that coming to fruition here, what let me think back. I'll think back. With that coming to fruition here for yourself, is there a part of that side of the responsibilities that would come with that you are? What's the best way I can ask? You're looking at how you're going to go about it handling this because you're going to be the producer, I imagine. You're a screenwriter, you're acting, and then you're more or less probably going to be directing, unless you can give us somebody else that can 100% agree with what your vision is here and follow suit with that, but add their own flavor to it that you can trust that will not take away from what you initially envisioned in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't find that can do that here for you, then you have to take on that responsibility for yourself and having to take on more work as a result of that. In preparing for something of that sort with that amount of responsibility, are you more or less what's the best way to ask here? Because I was going to say scared. That's not what I would say, but
is it stressful?
stressed
Yes.
out. Yeah, are you stressed out like this? When this comes together here, the amount of work that's going to be involved with this here, can I handle it? Because you handle certain respects of the production that you have it at a smaller scale, or you just do one aspect of it here. But now to take it on another level for yourself and taking on more responsibilities that you yourself you feel the need to do so to get your vision out there, to get it done right the way you want to see it. There's a lot of responsibility that will come with it. So I'm curious how you are preparing to go about it here once that comes to fruition.
Yeah, well, I mean, I literally was 5 days away from shooting before when we had to cancel. So I'm glad though that we didn't, because I've learned so much that I feel I can make it better. My main thing though, it especially when like these are very, very small budgeted things, I just feel that I feel I have a skill and I take it seriously enough that even though I don't have barely any budget, I've paid for all of my productions like out of pocket. That I'm able to still make them look like legit films. So that's like what I've prided myself on. And I've been able to do that with very low amount of money because I have had some close people to me that would help. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would like to now, though, have enough money so that I could hire like a full-on production crew or production company and like do it the right way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Instead of being like everybody, I wouldn't have used somebody just because they would do it for free if they couldn't do what I wanted them to do, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it's like for One Armed Rabbit, I mean, I did pay my cameraman, but he's also an actor friend. You know, he's an actor first, and then does cinematography on his side. So I obviously, though, because he's my friend, was able to get him a lot cheaper than I would, you know, somebody who is like a cinematographer for their.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I do.
And it makes it difficult though, because then you have to like work on schedules, or you'd be like, this person's doing me a favor, so I have to do it when they can do it, and blah, 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 blah. It just makes it a lot more difficult when you don't have the money.
Right.
It does. So I was like, I would like to have a lot more money for this one, so that I don't have to worry. You know, there's even comes that thing where you're like, oh, I'm not paying this person this much. They could get another job where they're making twice as much and literally cancel on me the day before the shoot. You know, if I had the money that I wanted, I could set that in stone and not have to worry about like stuff falling through last minute or whatever. It would just feel super more legit, you know, and then that would make it a lot more stressless. Less stressful.
So and that's the complexity that I was wanting to get from you here, because I like I said before, there are a lot of things that people don't understand what it takes to make a movie. And you're pointing out some of the more finer details about, well, I had to hire a friend that's an actor, but he could also help work the cameras. And I was kind of by default, but you mean there's a reason why you did it. But I think a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of work that's involved with this here, and it's not easy. And I think it's really important to point this out here. I do appreciate you sharing that here, because I'll be honest with you, if you know, I believe that, you know, eventually we will get this movie done here. What I do hope would happen is that when you finally get the movie done, that it'll be on the terms that works best to tell the story. And I hope that, you know, the amount of stress you would be dealing with here, that you would be able to overcome them and be able to tell a really good story along the way.
Exactly.
That more or less you can look back and say, it was tough, but I had a good time, and it was worth it.
Right. And then that's also too why I was talking about how like possibly having a director come in, because I was like, you know, there's something that feels so cool. Like when I shot One Armed Rabbit, I wrote it, I directed it, I produced it, I did the costumes, I did special effects makeup for it because there's like some stuff in it. Right. And then, I mean, I did everything. And then my friend who's the actor, who, by the way, he is a legit cinematographer now too, and an actor. So in case he sees this, I don't want him to think that I was saying he's a half-ass cinematographer. But yeah, I basically had him, and then I had a couple of friends just there to help, and then I had a sound guy. But like that's how small it was, you know. And I did everything else. So it was like at some point, as I've gone along further with the other things I've made, I was like, it's okay to relinquish a job to somebody else. Like there's that pride that's like, I feel cool that I did all these jobs myself. Yeah. But that's also not really what filmmaking is. It's a group thing. And like, it's only going to be better if you have this person do this when they're legit better at it than you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I would like to be able to pay them what they're actually worth.
What has been your experience for you, if you don't mind me asking this here, when it comes to working on a production, whether it be film or television, and even if it's a high caliber type of production, both film and television, and you've had a pretty bad experience on it, but you got paid well. And if I'm not sure if you look at it in the perspective that, well, you know, I'm getting paid for this here, so therefore I'm just going to tolerate it. Or do you think this is not worth all this turmoil here for, even though I'm getting paid X amount of money, this is not worth it? Because I'm actually curious to see what your perspective on how you view that for yourself, because I understand that you know this is a business and that you have to make money and that you want to make a living off of this year. But to me, you do strike me as someone that you're doing this because you love it, even though there's some hurdles you're overcoming this year. But I'm wondering if you have a perspective on how you look at that for yourself, where you know even though you're getting paid well in certain gigs, but the stress that comes with the job, at least in this production, wasn't worth it for you. So I'm wondering if you have some perspective on that for yourself and how you've learned to deal with that as you go on to the next project and how to handle yourself differently in that regard.
Um, the only bad experiences I've had, to be honest, was when I was younger and I was doing stuff just so that I could get something. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But I haven't really had an experience that was where I actually legit was making good money and was a legit production, and I felt bad on set.
Okay.
So, I mean, and I mean that all honesty, except that one thing that I told you that happened, which just made me feel insecure. I basically just left that day feeling like I had not done a good job as an actor.
Right.
So it wasn't like there was like drama or whatever. I just didn't feel like, you know, they weren't clapping at the end. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That was kind of that one experience I was talking about. But the bad experience I've had was just the people, and this is, again, I wouldn't have known this without having grown up. Seeing how I was taken advantage of when I was younger, and how I was so desperate to be in something that I did something that I did parts for free, and that, you know, was like a fly by the, you know, you get all excited. Oh, we're shooting tomorrow. And then they cancel like the day off, and you've asked off work, and, you know, just a waste of time nightmare. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then it's like, and then you see the footage too, or the film or whatever it is, and it's really bad. It's like, why did I even bother doing that? So now I don't do those things. So
do you feel like as you're doing more of this year, that your perspective on how you're going to go about in creating your content, because of the experience you have working on a production, working with other actors, writers, directors, and seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then learning to having to find a way to apply that for yourself, whether it be on the short films that you work on or this production that you're wanting to get off the ground here. Do you have like on something that has changed for you a great deal about how you go about the filmmaking process that you probably didn't notice before or didn't consider before, that now you are focusing on to make it the best experience as possible for yourself in all different aspects of the field?
If it's that answer that I give is based on like the productions that I've made, communication and not waiting, not procrastinating.
Okay.
Am I answering your question?
Well, I'm not sure what your answer is going to be in that respect, but I think
and also, I guess, just knowing that you can plan for everything, but something's going to go wrong. So plan for everything. So
okay.
that when that one thing does go wrong, at least all these other things don't go wrong. And I mean, I had that experience with one of the things I made, where waiting to get equipment to the last minute, or waiting to get like a prop that we needed or something, and not depending on other people too. Like, I guess I have learned that phrase, you know, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
Right.
And that goes back to what I was just saying too, about those projects that I did for free or whatever. You know, it's like, I was so desperate to be anything. I'm like, I'm going to let this guy make a movie. I'm going to be in it. I'm going to do it for free. I'm not going to even, you know, get the footage for my reel. I'm like, it's probably going to take him 4 years to edit it. Like, it's just like a waste of time, you know? And it's like, in that time, because I actually have the discipline and the goals and the dream, could have made a freaking movie myself. So just go make the movie yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Then it goes back to what I was saying too about, people are like, oh, I'm just going to get an agent and then I'm going to wait for something to happen. Like I still submit to auditions. I have 5 agents and I still submit to auditions every day on my own. So they're doing that, but I'm also doing it too. And if I see something that I know can help them, then I reach out to them and help them. I don't just have like one agent and then I sit and watch TV all day and wait for them to get me an audition. I'm actively looking myself because like it matters and I want it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Interesting.
I have no idea if I answered your question.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not sure what the answer is going to be. So it's kind of up in the air how you're going to go about it here. But I try to get an idea for how I like for the conversation to go. And a lot of times you just don't know what's going to come out of it. And that's the standard. But what as I mentioned earlier before, that I am very interested in learning about what your journey is. And sometimes I feel like, when I ask the questions, I asked this question already, but let me ask it from a different angle here. And, more or less I get the same answer, but maybe with a little bit more insight that I was looking for here. So if I did repeat my question in some ways, I apologize, but there's some things that you have said that caught my attention. So let me dig a little bit further here. But with that being said, though, I believe that with what you have been able to share here, sharing some perspective that I probably didn't get from other guests that I've had on the show, that you have been able to elaborate a little bit further given your experience here, which I think is really important for you to tell, because although the journey is virtually the same for everybody, but the events of the journey is going to be massively different for everybody here. And I really believe that with what you have been able to share, for me personally, I'm really excited to see, honestly, that project that you're working on, that the Joker Harley Quinn-esque project that you have. I'm really curious to see what your take on that is here, because it's something that I never really envisioned. And there was actually one thing that came to mind where, and it's so funny you mentioned that, because there was a DC Universe animated film that had the Joker in that movie be Batman's mother.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know what I'm talking about? So, but you don't see her except for like that one scene. I'm like, I would have loved to have seen a lot more of her, but we never did.
Right.
So they overlooked that character. And I'm wondering if that would have been the most interesting thing about the entire movie. And that really was one of the most interesting about the film, that it was heavily overlooked. So when you said that it reminded me of that scene in the movie. And I thought, imagine if we can get that character more or less expanded on with your film. I'm not sure if it's in the same vein as that film, but I'm just saying that it dawned on me that that's something that it's really unique to see, and to get it from your perspective. I'm really curious to see how that will all come out. So I do hope that this will be coming down the line for you really soon to get that fleshed out here and then worked out and released for people to check out. But I'm wondering if there's anything that you would like to put out there that for anyone that may be interested in checking you out, and what they can look out for you and upcoming projects that will eventually be coming down the pipeline that you're able to share with here, that people can be on the lookout for.
So, well, I still don't know if I'm allowed to say what that show is that's mine, but I'm sure people probably know what I'm talking about. I think I can, but all I'll say is it's related to Breaking Bad. So you will see me in the last 2 episodes as the series finale. And I just was in a show called Killing It with Craig Robinson.
Oh yeah.
On Peacock. And then I'm shooting a new digital mini series, I think tomorrow, on Thursday actually, called 1,000 Tomorrows, which is it's about a young bull rider. And then it's like a little love story, I guess. So digital mini series, it's going to be on Sony. So that's what I have on the horizon now, and then just plugging away at auditions, and then hopefully getting some fun so I can shoot Kaleidoscope, which is the Joker movie.
That's a great title. I like that. All right. Well, for the camera here, I want to say thank you very much for giving me your time and sharing the stories here with me. And I really do wish nothing but great success here for you for all the future projects you have coming down the pipeline here. But otherwise, I want to say thank you. And until next time, cheers.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well.